Hey Fiends, before we start, I just wanted to remind everyone, because we recorded this episode before the official announcement, my book, Bride of Frankenstein, is out now. You can get it at diediebooks.com. You can get it from Amazon. You can ask for it at your local indie bookstore. This is like 200 pages or so of deep analysis about James Whale's 1935 film, Bride of Frankenstein. I had a blast writing it. I've already enjoyed some of the responses I've gotten from people, so I would love to hear what you all think. So check it out when you can, and let me know what you think. Take it away, Spooky Piano Man.
The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
The gif of Ian Holm as Bilbo Baggins suddenly going crazy scary at Frodo trying to grab the one ring that is Hayden Orr. My pronouns are also he, him.
We mentioned last week that we were going to be doing this, and I didn't know much about it before sitting down to watch it, and was like, holy shit, Ian Holm? Which, like, a much younger Ian Holm, actually, which was kind of fun. And even after, we made a little joke about Gandalf in the last episode as well, so it was a little funny connection.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is Mystery and Imagination, Frankenstein, which I did a little bit of research about this show, and it's so crazy how much like classic British TV, they just like did not give a fuck about it and like lost so much shit. Like this was a series that went on for like I think 4 or 5 seasons, and they lost like 10 episodes of it or something. Like I think there's like 8 total episodes that have survived from this, and thankfully this is among them, because this is a pretty interesting adaptation, like that sort of mostly tries to be faithful, but then where it diverts, it does some pretty cool stuff that I've never seen before. So it would have been a real shame to have just had somebody tape over this at whatever, studio made this.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. Has anybody ever actually looked into why so much stuff that they like produced on the BBC and like from the 50s through the 60s just kind of got forgotten or lost like that?
It seems like they didn't have enough storage facilities and didn't think that people would care, that they just were going to crank out new stuff, and that like they just didn't have the idea of like reruns or home video. And like, that's and I think maybe part of it is also when you see shows that have, like, I think the main example most people are aware of is Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of episodes from the first Doctor that are missing, and then there's like a couple with the second Doctor, I believe. And by the third, they were like, oh no, people care about this, we should preserve this, and then it's good. And that's the same way with this Mystery and Imagination. It's like the first 2 seasons, I think, are like completely gone except for like 1 episode. So I think it took them a while to be like, oh, people might want this in the future. Maybe we should preserve this. Because like, in fact, it seemed like from what I saw, like 2 different studios did this show, and it was like the first studio just did not care, and then when the second studio took over, they started trying to preserve them. But yeah, it's a shame. I mean, like, it's wild to think that like there are pieces of art that were like that people went to all this trouble to make it, and then it's just gone because no one bothered to care.
Yeah, I mean, especially like, well, I don't know. I don't know what Ian Holm's career was like before Alien, and him being in like actual films through the 70s and 80s, and then of course being in Lord of the Rings. I mean, he's giving an incredible performance in this for just a TV movie like kind of thing. The stuff that they're doing is like kind of like really crazy good.
Yeah, like this could have just been like these sort of like anthology shows. Like some of them were just like, we're gonna crank out a new story every week, and we're gonna use a bunch of public domain stuff, and like have a writer sort of like punch it up to make it short enough to fit on our hour and a half or whatever we've got. Like I think this must have aired over an hour and a half with like commercials, because it's like an hour 18 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, there definitely was commercials, because we have like title cards in between where you can tell where the commercial breaks were. But yeah, like this could have been that. They could have just been like, oh well, we'll get rid of the Justine subplot, or we'll get rid of the Arctic stuff, and just kind of basically tell the story that's in the book. But instead, we have some interesting changes that like raise new questions and make us approach the story in a different way. And like it definitely did not need to do that at this time period, where it's just like we're just filling the air. We've just got more airtime than we know what to do with, and here's a cheap, easy way to not have to like pay a writer to do something. But instead, we get this where they have gone to the effort to do something.
Yeah, this is like one of those Frankenstein things, like movies or media or whatever, that I've been aware of for like a super long time. Because it's like, you get stuff like Famous Monsters of Filmland, where they talk about all these old, like classic monster movies and stuff. Or I used to have this like 2 VHS, like basically documentary on Frankenstein, just like Frankenstein in general, like the story, like what it, all the movies and stuff that it's inspired over the years, etc. And this is like one of those things that would always pop up that they would talk about, where it's like, yeah, it's this TV movie kind of like show where they did like a different story every episode, and it's one of the like only time where the monster and Victor are like played by the same actor, and blah blah blah. It's like this and that Tales of Frankenstein TV show that I think Hammer produced back right after Curse of Frankenstein came out. Like these two things have always kind of been like on my radar because of stuff like that, but I've never actually sat down and like watched them. Well, this one until now, but this is like it was really exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience where like, yeah, this has been on the list for the podcast since we started, and I just had like I hadn't watched it before and was just kind of like, I'll watch it when we get to it. And I don't know, just like recently I was like, that seems like something that might be fun. I don't know really anything about it. And yeah, it like was way more interesting than it needed to be, and in a way that like, yeah, I was really kind of blown away. And so I was trying to look this up. Well, this episode was written by a TV writer named Robert Mueller, who apparently also wrote another TV movie for a different anthology series that is a more or a less faithful adaptation of Frankenstein, but that follows a lot of Frankensteinian narrative stuff, and I know zero about it, but we are definitely going to be watching it very soon, because like I was so impressed by this that I'd really like to see what he would do with like Frankensteinian themes when he's like less constrained by like a fairly faithful adaptation.
Oh yeah. I mean, if this is what he does, when they're like adapt this, 200-year-old book for an hour-long TV movie, I mean, if he's gotten a little bit more creative freedom, I can't imagine.
Yeah, we'll definitely be doing that one soon. Well, obviously, I'll have you join me for that one, and we can compare these two. But for now, let's get into this actual episode or this story, which as I kind of hinted, does skip over all of the Arctic stuff, which is, of course, they're going to do that when they've got a pretty short window of time. And we start with Victor at school, and we've got an anatomy lecture, and there's a corpse on a table under a sheet, but we're not gonna, this is TV, we're not gonna show the dissection, but we have our Professor Kemp, who's talking about all after all the dissections we've done, all of the work that surgeons have done. The mysteries of the human heart and the divine spark of life, we haven't been able to quite crack that yet. And then he's sort of that's the end of his lecture. He dismisses the students. But we see one student up in the balcony who is furiously taking notes and just doesn't even notice that the class is over and everybody else is gone. And this is, of course, our Victor Frankenstein, played by Ian Holm. And it's interesting, I feel like we often have, in the novel, we have the two professors, one who is sort of antagonistic to Victor and one who's more sympathetic to him. And, that antagonistic being Kemp and Waldman being the more sympathetic. Sometimes we'll we only have Waldman in the Universal film and stuff. Mm-hmm. But here we have only Kemp, but he's a more sympathetic character. He's not he comes up and talks to Victor, and he's like, so I know you're more of a student of the philosophical side of things. And basically I know you're reading Paracelsus and all this stuff, but you seem so you're here. You're not going to be a surgeon, but you're you've attended all my lectures. That's so interesting. And I'm just curious, what's keeping you here for this stuff when you've got other interests? And Victor's no, I like it all, and I want to combine it all. And Kemp's cool. I'm curious to see how you're going to combine these two different, paths. He's not this other stuff that I don't study is trash. He's just okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, he's very, very different from, I don't know why they wouldn't have just made him Waldman instead of Kemp.
Yeah, it is one of the sort of just inexplicable choices here, but he's just a sympathetic professor, so it's good to have one of those for Victor. And then we have a little later, Victor is alone in the sort of laboratory. He has a sort of a house where he's working, but he has a 2-story lab. He's got a little study area and then a ladder that goes up into his more Gothic laboratory.
Yeah.
And so at first he's just kind of down in the study working at a desk, and then he goes up the ladder to the second story where he is starting to work, and then is interrupted by a hunchback named Fritz, who is not actually his assistant currently. He's actually just delivering a letter. He seems like he's just kind of a guy who does odd jobs around town. He's hey, I've got this letter for you. And Victor sort of starts showing him around the lab. And this lab is super cool, actually. I again, for this being a TV movie, I was really surprised by the effort they put into this. It's not quite as grandiose as the labs in the Universal films, but it is on a bigger scale than the sort of grubby labs that Hammer has. This feels larger than life. In fact, there's a a fully articulated skeleton up on in this like framework, sort of crucified in the center of the room. It looks really cool.
Yeah, I was surprised at how much effort they put into the actual like laboratory set, because that, I mean, we've seen different kind of like creation apparati throughout, you know, Frankenstein media, but this one is like particularly unique, and especially like with the take that they have on the monster on top of that, it really helps this stand out like among the pack of adaptations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, you've read Presumption, right? The play?
Yes.
I think you covered it, didn't you, on an episode or like a bonus episode?
Yeah, we talked about it on the Patreon.
Yeah, I forget because I know Fritz, like the Hunchback assistant, is like a creation for the play, but I forget. Is Fritz from Presumption? Like, does this follow a little bit of the original play, like structurally? Because I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, Fritz definitely is from Presumption, but like he's sort of depicted differently. Like in Presumption, it's like Fritz and his wife are like the two servants that work for Frankenstein, and like the wife is sort of like the housekeeper or whatever. And they're sort of like a comic relief couple, like a Punch and Judy that like kind of are like arguing with each other the whole time. Whereas like this and like they're both definitely just like employees, you know, like they're Fritz views working for Victor as like a job in that. But here, like it in fact, it's in this scene where like Victor is like, you know, showing him around, and Fritz is impressed. Like he's like, this is amazing what you're doing here. And Victor's like, you seem like you appreciate what I'm doing here, and you're a smart guy, and I could use some help. Would you be my assistant? Like there's a, you know, I mean, it's definitely hierarchical here that like Victor is in charge, but you know, this Fritz is not quite like just a servant.
Yeah.
He's more like an assistant.
Yeah.
You know, he's like he's a John Watson rather than just like, you know,
an Igor,
a whipping boy servant.
Yeah. So if they were following Presumption more, it would be like if Dwight Fry's Fritz was married to Una O'Connor's character from Bride, and they were just running around in the background screaming at each other.
Exactly. Yes. But yeah, so they have I really like their conversation too, because they're kind of kindred spirits where like, you know, Fritz is like, seeing what you're doing here, like it seems like you're going to be a great man of science one day. And Frankenstein's like, I want to be more than that even. I want to perform miracles. Like, you know, and they both agree, like, obviously God doesn't exist, but we could be our own gods here on Earth. Yeah, so they're, you know, but first we're going to create life, but we got to understand death first. So we're kind of setting that up. And as a little aside, like the term man of science, like this, obviously, you know, I mean, if you listen to our podcast, you hear me talk about a man of science at the beginning of every episode, quoting the Universal film. So that term comes up in Frankenstein stuff a lot. And I only recently learned why that sort of clunky term gets used. It's because for a long time, like that this was the term we used for people who were sort of like Renaissance men who, like, you know, dabbled in a lot of things and kind of combined it all into this sort of like using the scientific method and all this. Like the term scientist, I wish I knew this woman's name. I bad feminist here. They invented the term scientist because there was a woman doing a lot of science and they couldn't call her a man of science. So they were like, well, so scientist originates. So Hallie, my girlfriend, you know, being in med school and doing science, likes to joke that, like, you know, as there's like there's actors, but then you have to come up with actress. We have to have the lady word.
Yeah.
So she likes to occasionally be like, well, he's a man scientist. Like, the scientist refers specifically to women, and every now and then there's a man who's allowed to be a scientist too. But yeah, so anyway, we have these two guys who want to be men of science, who've got this plan to become like God because God isn't real. And then Fritz is like, oh yeah, I forgot. I came here to give you a letter, not to get a job. Here's the letter. And so Victor opens it and is like, oh, Henry. And we cut to later, Victor meeting Henry Clerval at a pub. And, you know, he has come to town. He's actually going to start going to school. We have the whole thing where, like, he's finally convinced his father to let him, you know, study and not just be a sales clerk or whatever. And this reunion's very happy. Like, we've had versions of this where Victor's like, oh, you know, I'm in the middle of things and you're in my way and everything. But he's very glad to see a familiar face. They catch each other up on what they've been up to, obviously, you know, ignoring the science that he can't talk about, but like, how's the family? How's Elizabeth? All of that. But then Clerval is like, oh yeah, Elizabeth, she's great, but you'll see soon because she's gonna come and stay here and she's gonna be around until you finish school. Like, she just misses you too much. It's been too hard to be apart. So you'll get to see more of Elizabeth. That's great, right? And Victor does not seem very excited about it.
Yeah, no, he's definitely not into that idea.
And even less so that she's going to be bringing along with her Victor's younger brother, Wilhelm, and Justine, who Victor doesn't seem to remember. I think we've had versions of this where Victor either never met her or is like, oh yeah, the servant girl, I forgot her name was Justine. And it kind of seems like that's the vibe here, where he's like, oh yeah, okay, the maid, I remember. He suddenly kind of is struck by like, he starts talking about his work a little bit, but like vaguely, and then like you can see where he like suddenly there's like a light bulb over his head, like, oh, that's what I need to do. And he's like, I gotta go. And he just like runs out of the pub, and Henry's like, good talking to you, buddy. Just left alone there at the bar. And we cut to Victor and Fritz in a graveyard at night. And, you know, as opposed to our Henry and Fritz from the Universal films, who are like, you know, in a graveyard digging up a grave, these guys are a little bit too classy for that. So they're just standing around watching a guy they've paid to dig up the grave.
Yeah, that was very funny to me. Just like, I don't know if it was intentional, maybe it was, but I just thought the idea of them paying somebody to dig up a grave and then just standing there while they fucking do all of the work, just talking shit the whole time, was very funny to me.
Yeah, and there's even like a point where like, I can't even remember which of the two is like, maybe we should help him, and the other one's like, nah, we paid this guy.
I think Fritz literally is like, it brings it up, and Victor's like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah, so they end up like, they're gonna like, okay, well, he's got it under control. We should head home. And Fritz is like, yeah, you should rest. And Frank's like, or Victor's like, you know, nah, I can't rest at a time like this. But we cut away from that, so presumably he does go get some amount of rest. And we have Elizabeth, Wilhelm, and Justine arriving at the inn where Henry is staying. They haven't just gone straight to Victor's house, but they're tired, but very much looking forward to getting to reunite with Victor. But Elizabeth's like, is Victor not excited to see us? Why is he not here to greet us? Are you hiding something from us, Henry? Like, is he sick? Has he fallen out of love with me? What's wrong? And Henry's like, no. He's just very focused on his work, but he's very glad he's missed you very much, and he's glad you're coming to see him, and he's looking forward to spending some time with you. which is, maybe fudging the truth just a little
Yeah,
bit.
just a tad.
And we cut from that to Victor, who is certainly hard at work. He's got like a bone saw and is just like cutting into a corpse. But like some time has passed because Henry arrives and he's like downstairs. Like I think Fritz calls Victor down, and Henry's like, "Where have you been? Like, we were supposed to have dinner an hour ago. Elizabeth arrived in town 2 days ago. What's going on? I told her you weren't sick, but I'm beginning to think maybe you are." And this is when, like, we get some sort of more familiar, declarations from Victor where he's like, "I don't have time for relationships and romance and love. Like, I have to work on this project is all that matters right now. If there weren't men like me who could set aside their affections, then we would still be living in caves. We would have never moved on as a people. Like you need single-minded, focused inventors and creators to push society forward," which I understand as a sentiment, but I don't necessarily think is true. I think that people can, improve society by interacting with their families and understanding what people need and want.
Yeah.
Losing sight of your humanity is how you end up with a Victor Frankenstein who does something insane instead of like, someone who moves the world forward in a way that improves humanity and life for everyone. Victor tries to send Henry away, but then there is like a moment where he like the veneer cracks a little bit and he's like, "Henry, help me. I cannot be God." So it almost feels like this adaptation is trying to indicate that there is some sort of insanity, some sort of sickness that has overtaken Victor. And for a moment there, he like, gets outside of that. It's almost like he's possessed and like the real Victor takes over for a second.
Yeah. Which I think, I don't know, maybe that's like something that they were trying to like play with a little bit, because with Victor and the creature, or in this movie they call it the being, which I thought was very interesting. I don't think there's ever been an adaptation where they give it such a like ambiguous name like that. Like it's almost always the monster or the creature, or Frankenstein or Frankenstein's monster. But there's something about that, them calling it the being, that I found very interesting. But there's a lot of parts of this movie where you could feel like Victor didn't actually bring anything to life, and the being, or like the creature, is just like sort of like a Jekyll and Hyde thing with Victor. Like it's like a part of him that he is like unaware of almost, and like that it's getting out and like doing things, because they also play with that a little bit with Felix later on, which we'll get to, thinking that Victor is the being and that the being is Victor.
Yeah, that's definitely the thing about this that makes it special. The combination of those two things, the similar appearance and Felix's response to it, that's really the centerpiece of this, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, once Victor kind of has this moment where he like, is himself for a second, or his better self, I guess, he does end up going out to dinner. Like he joins his family, and he's very apologetic to Elizabeth and Wilhelm, and things seem to be going well. Everyone's kind of reconnecting and having a good time, until Elizabeth says something, again, indicating that she wants to move in with him into his house and stay there until he's ready to go back to Geneva. And as soon as Victor realizes that, he's like, "No, you can't do that. Like, please, if you love me, just listen to me. Just go home. And I promise you, as soon as I finish my work, I will dedicate my life to you. but you being here is not good for my work, and it's not good for you. Please don't do that. And when she doesn't seem very receptive to that, he just like rushes out of the pub. And Elizabeth, they're all still sitting around. And again, he's abandoned them. But now, at least this group is together. It's just not Henry by himself. And Elizabeth's like, I'm going to go to his house. I'm going to see him. I'm going to save him from whatever is occupying his mind, because it's clearly something's wrong. So we cut away from that to him at the lab, and now where there was the skeleton, we now have like a fleshed body that is wrapped in bandages, but it's still in the center of the room on this big pedestal, crucified, and like a storm is raging outside. So we know the time has come. And we also I don't know if they ever give the guy a name, but the guy who was digging up the grave, I think we eventually find out that he wasn't just some like stray guy they paid as like a resurrectionist. He runs the cemetery, or is like the groundskeeper or something. Like he is on staff at the cemetery.
I wrote his name down. His name is Ross.
Okay.
But yeah, he pops up a lot more after the grave digging scene. He kind of becomes like almost like a third to the duo of Victor and Fritz.
Yeah, like specifically here we have this sort of, it's like it's time for the bringing the creature to life scene, and Victor's speaking very grandiosely of God. He's instructing Fritz on what to do. Meanwhile, Ross is just like, what you think aren't you afraid to talk about God? That like God is going to punish us for what we've done here. He's very fearful of what he has, participated in. Victor and Fritz have no interest in talk of God like that. Like they want to be God, but they don't want to talk about this idea that there's a real God in the sky or whatever. But they're interrupted in their argument by a knock at the door. And Ross wants to go see what's going on, but Victor's like, no, I don't trust you. Fritz, go see who's at the door. So Fritz goes down, answers it, and of course it's Henry and Elizabeth who want to come upstairs to talk to Victor. And Fritz is trying to keep them back. And then he's sort of helped in that because Ross comes running down the stairs and kind of like bumps into them and pushes them back. And Victor is up in the top lab yelling down, calling Ross a fool. And that's when Elizabeth's like, oh, he's deranged. Like he is much more insane than we realized. So she's like, Henry, take me back to your room. This isn't the time. I don't think we're going to make any progress trying to talk to him right now. They leave and we cut back upstairs to Victor, who is standing in front of his creation that is, still in Christ pose. And Victor, in his sort of like, manic glee at his, his scientific achievement, he's mimicking it. He's got his arms outstretched in a Christ pose. Lightning is striking. This is, again, for this just to be like a little TV play, this scene looks good.
Oh, like yeah.
There's not quite the budget for the big explosions and all of that, but it we do have some lightning strikes. It does look really cool. And I did like that there's a little bit of like understatement here where like once this, everything calms down, the lightning is over, Victor walks over, puts his head against the creature's chest, and we hear a heartbeat, and he just very calmly says, I have succeeded. And he walks downstairs and sees his notes. And I don't think we mentioned this earlier, but one of the things in his like notebooks is he has like, the Da Vinci Vitruvian Man drawing that he was like making marks on where like, nerves and stuff were going to go or whatever. And of course the Vitruvian Man is also sort of in a Christ pose. So we're getting this repetition of this pose.
Yeah.
And when he looks at the drawing, he does go back into his sort of like mad science mode and just yells Genesis really loud.
Yeah.
Which is a particularly like it's a way of saying now I know what it's like to be God. This is, he's created his atom. This is his genesis. And then we get a really weird scene where we like see like a skull with worms crawling around on it, like no flesh, just like a bare skull with just some like fishing earthworms dropped on it. And then it like crossfades to Victor waking up, but it's not. Victor's upside down, so like it doesn't try to like match, like that. It's not trying to make Victor's face appear where the skull is exactly. I'm not really sure what they were going for there, but Victor wakes up, and of course his creature is standing over top of him, as we often see, which I think I saw something recently that Del Toro says like this is his favorite scene in the book, which is interesting. Like it's a scene we see in most adaptations, but it's not one that I really think about a lot. It just kind of is.
Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously, usually I think when people do think about that scene, they think of the Bernie Wrightson drawing, the iconic, plate that's, just this huge, imposing, Greek statuesque monster, kind of childishly, like, lilting towards Victor. But yeah, like, it's not really one that gets a whole lot of focus a lot of the time. I mean, it pops up, like you said, but I think Del Toro's version really is the first time it's ever really like done, and then like he stays with it. Like it goes from like the monster looking over Victor to like its own entire scene, really, instead of Victor being scared and running out and then it cutting to the next.
Yeah,
it definitely like focuses and lingers on that moment in the creation.
And I will say for this version, this is another case where like that this moment is really important, because we have Victor's face as he is seeing the creature, and we like, as the creature is like approaching, we just get like, we see its hand kind of come into frame. And so we have a while where we don't see what the creature looks like. We saw him before wrapped in bandages, but we're just focusing on Victor's response, and he's horrified. He says, "What have I done?" And we hear the creature say, "Who am I?" And then the camera cuts the other direction, and we see the creature. And I think we've already kind of said this, but it's also Ian Holm, with very little prosthetics or anything. It's pretty much just Ian Holm with a scar across his forehead and a little bit of like the scaliness on one side of his face. Is it like almost like a burn?
Yeah, he's got a rash.
Yeah, but like very, very clearly the same face. And this creature is reaching out towards his creator, who, as we often see in this scene, is screaming "No" and "Be gone" and "Get away from me." And we cut away from that to Professor Kemp, who runs into Fritz at a pub, and is like, I heard you were working with Victor Frankenstein. How are things going there? And Fritz is like, I mean, it's going okay, but Victor he's been taken with a fever, but don't worry, he's well cared for. And Kemp is glad to hear that, and is like, I'll have to check in on him, basically. And so it feels like a little bit of time has jumped ahead, because then we see that yes, he did. We did have like him falling into a fever after encountering his creation, and he's now being cared for by Elizabeth. And when he wakes up, he's like, have you all seen him? Where is he? And she's like, who are you talking about? And that's a huge relief to Victor. Thank God. But he's like, where is he though? Where is he? So it's like, there's a moment of like, he's like, great. Okay. So he's not fucking shit up while I've been unconscious, but also for real though, where is he? Like, yeah. I gotta find him, because it's gonna happen. Like the problems may have not happened yet, but they're gonna happen. And so, as Victor is saying, where is he? We cut away and see where he is, which is like in the forest. And he's just like, running through the forest, confused, in pain. He's kind of crying and screaming, just lost, and as we often see in this kind of this moment when the creature is alone and in pain for the first time, we hear music, which draws him in, and or no, actually no, we don't hear the music first. He finds a little chicken coop and goes to hide in it, and then he hears the music through the wall. So he peeks through a crack in the wall, and we see our old man DeLacy. I don't know why, but I love the fact that like adaptation, like the old blind man, he's always gonna play music, but like it doesn't really matter what he's playing. We've had him play a violin, we've had him play a guitar. Here he's playing a flute, and I don't know why people just decide to make him have a different instrument, but I find that fascinating, and I don't really know. I'm not sure if there's like a meaning to that, or they're just like, well, we have this actor who can play or convincingly appear to play this particular instrument, or our composer wants to have the theme played on this instrument or whatever. But like, it's just kind of neat that it's always different.
Yeah. I think maybe part of it comes down to like personal preference of, say, maybe the director or writer of the like specific adaptation.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Like if I was the monster, what would be the music that would draw me in? I could see being a director and thinking about it in that way.
Wasn't there another adaptation where the blind man is playing a flute?
I think so, but I was trying to remember it. Like I feel like violin is what we mostly see, and then I think that like in fact violin is what we saw in the Del Toro one, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of my favorites is the guitar in the Danny Boyle play. I just really like what they do with that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I do feel like there's been another, at least one other one where it's a flute. But I don't remember specifically which version.
It's not the Branagh version, is it?
Maybe.
If it is,
yeah,
that would be very interesting, since Ian Holm is also in that version.
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about that, yeah.
I might be wrong, but I feel like it's a flute in that version. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, if it's not, I like the idea that it could be. Like, that's a fun echo. So we end up meeting sort of, the creature watching through the wall. In this version, we have the blind man and his two children, Felix and Anna, not Agatha. And that's it. We will not have a Safi, or sometimes we have like a little sister or whatever. Here it's just this trio, and they have dinner, and we also get our first sort of like interesting sort of like side connection. In this version, Anna has a job. They're not just like, farmers hiding out in the woods. Mm-hmm. She is the housekeeper at the inn where Henry and all of, Victor's family is staying. And in fact, she's able to kind of like sneak out food from the kitchens there. And that's how this poor family is able to survive. She's got, I think, bread that she took from there or something like that. While they're eating, the creature's watching. He also somehow just finds a pair of pants in this chicken coop. Lucky for him.
That got a chuckle out of me, just because they're literally like in a pile of hay that he's sitting on. It's like, oh, okay, sure.
Because he's mostly kind of like, he's wearing like bandage scraps. He has like a cloak that earlier Victor sort of threw at him in his terror. So like there's a reason why he has that. But yeah, I guess they were like, well, he can't just be in like this much tattered clothes for the whole rest of the movie. He needs some pants. Where's he going to find pants? Sure, in a chicken coop. This is also where we get the moment where he like, there's a little like body of water for the chickens to drink out of, like some kind of dish or something, and he sees his reflection and is sort of like, tears in his eyes as he sees that he looks like a monster. And we jump from him seeing that to Wilhelm waking from a nightmare, which I thought was kind of like a nice little, like, yes, this creature is nightmarish. Almost him seeing his own appearance caused William across town to have or Wilhelm, I guess we're doing like the German name thing here, caused Wilhelm to, like, startle himself awake. And so he calls out for Justine, not Elizabeth. So it's clear that, like, Wilhelm has like a very close relationship with Justine, which I think, will eventually, the sort of the way that the novel goes is what we have here with Wilhelm and Justine. But I think showing that, like, he has a very close relationship with her makes what happens feel more upsetting,
Yeah.
That, like, that he actually feels a fondness for her, and that, that is reciprocated by her. But, like, once they kind of, like, tuck Wilhelm in and get him back to sleep, Justine and Elizabeth continue to discuss Victor and his sort of sickness, and they hope that he will recover soon and they can all go home and forget about all of this. And then we go back to the cottage where Felix and and Anna have left, and the blind man is alone, and of course this is when I keep saying the creature, but I guess, in this movie we should call him the being, which I agree with you. I think it's even more neutral than creature. It's an interesting term to use here. But he comes in and says that he's brought wood for the fire, and the man thanks him, but is like, "I'm sorry, I can't see you to help. I'm blind. But if you want company or you need a space to rest for a moment, I'm happy to offer that." And we get this great bit where, like, we often have the fire bad and the blind man teaching him that, no, fire can be good. Here it's sort of the reverse. He seems to kind of understand what people use fire for. That's why he's brought the wood, and he wants to, like, stoke the fire, and he puts the logs in and burns himself, and that's when he discovers that fire can also be bad.
Yeah.
And the blind man, of course, is apologetic that he hurt himself or whatever. And I think they start talking about music, and the blind man asks where he's from, and again, I guess this whole conversation sort of, like, diverts from what we're used to in a way that I really like. So, like, we have this conversation where he's like, "Where are you from?" And the creature kind of grunts at this, and he's like, "Oh, are you like me? Are you defective in some way?" And he says, "I am ugly." And the blind man asks how old he is, and he says, "I'm new. I received life only yesterday." And the blind man's like, you're talking in riddles. I don't really understand what you mean, but maybe in God's good time I'll understand. And that leads the being to ask, well, who is God? And we have the blind man trying to explain the concept of God, and he's like, God made us all. He's our creator. And the being's like, if God made me, then God is bad. God bad. And this is kind of like the subtext that most Frankenstein stories, at least dabble in discussing, like this idea that if my creator made me bad and wrong, then the creator is bad, and if my creator abandoned me and left me to suffer, then the creator is bad.
Yeah, for this scene, Robert Mueller was like, I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
Yes, yeah. and of course, the blind man is usually a very religious character, and he certainly is here, and this really upsets him. He's like, you're blasphemous. You can't speak this way about God. And the being is like, I know God. I've seen him. He tried to destroy me. He is bad. And the blind man is so offended by this that he starts just yelling, calling out for help. Like, I don't even want to be in the room to hear such blasphemy. And Felix rushes in, and kind of like fights the creature off and scares him away. So, like, we always have these scenes where, like, Felix comes in and fucks up this perfect moment between the creature and the blind man. But here, it's all to, like, their relationship has already fallen apart. Like, their interaction was bad in and of itself. They weren't on the same page. So it doesn't feel as, like, painful when Felix comes and separates it. It was inevitable. But that sort of is the beginning of where the creature's story sort of really falls apart. Felix gets a good look at this creature that he forces out of the house. And we cut away from that back to Victor, who is strangely, like, writing a journal entry about what he tried to do. Which seems so strange. Like, we always have this Victor who's like, as soon as he's taking a lot of notes, writing a lot of journal entries while he's doing shit, but as soon as he's done with the creature, he's done with the whole thing. And here he seems like he thinks it's still worthy to document what he tried, even though it was a failure in his mind. And in fact, like, I think the journal entry ends with I fear that unimaginable suffering is still in store for me and my family.
Yeah.
Which is a great way. Like, he writes that, it's like voiceover from Ian Holm. And we go straight to Henry and Elizabeth and Justine and Wilhelm playing in the forest. And Wilhelm is fascinated by Elizabeth's little locket, which in this version is not just a locket, but is like a tiny music box. Which, is right away like it's like the most Chekhov's item of any item.
Yeah.
One, we know what happens with lockets in Frankenstein stories. This is bad, but we also know that the monster really loves music. So we have this item that is just begging for the creature to find it, and things are going to go bad when he does. Of course, Elizabeth's like, yes, Wilhelm, you can take the locket and play with it for a while, but it's mine, and I do want it back eventually. When Wilhelm runs off, we have Henry and Elizabeth again. Anytime two characters that aren't Victor are together, they're going to talk about how they're worried about Victor. And Elizabeth's like, I don't think he loves me anymore. I don't know that he wants a wife at all, and certainly not me. And Henry is still kind of trying to, like, I think it'll be okay eventually. Like, he's very optimistic that someday Victor will come out of it. And back in the study, we had this scene that, like, at first I was like, is this a dream or is this real? And eventually enough things happen near the end of it that, yes, this is really happening. It's not in his imagination. But we have this great scene where, we know that Victor and the monster look alike, and we've had them in the same room, and the camera just kind of, like, creatively, cutting back and forth between the two of them. But now we have the two of them together on screen, and they've done it with, like, some sort of, like, matching matte split screen kind of thing. But they're having a conversation, and it's, like, considering when this is made and what they had to do this, it is really impressive. Like, Ian Holm is, like, having to, like, deliver dialogue, pause for the right amount of time, and then deliver his next line as Victor, and then, like, go back and do the whole thing over again as the monster, and it lines up perfectly. It's really, really great.
Yeah.
This is, one of the most impressive things in this adaptation is just, like, seeing Ian Holm act against himself in such an impressive way. And, like, that's part of part of what this scene is about is like, I have your face and I have your voice, but I also have your anger. And like, you know, you wish to kill me, but I will take your wish to kill and I will use it to kill with my hands. So beware. And, you know, then he just like, this is how, where like it's clear that it's not a dream, because he just smashes through a window and you know, like runs away. And Henry arrives moments later and sees the you know, the wreckage, the broken window and everything. So this obviously definitely really happened. But, you know, again, I don't think Henry knows what has happened. He just knows something happened here with Victor. Back at the other inn, Justine tucking Wilhelm into bed again. And so we don't, you know, often William is killed during a game of hide and seek out in the woods, but here they've made it home. Everything's okay. And, you know, Justine's tucking him into bed, and Wilhelm says, if Victor doesn't want to marry Elizabeth anymore, I wonder if she would marry me. And, you know, Justine's like, you're much too young. That would never work. And he's like, yeah, but I mean, I'm going to get older. Like, she could wait. It could happen. And, you know, it's like, you know, Justine's like, yeah, it's cute that you know, think that, but no, that's not how things are going to go. But like, pretty much the second she leaves and walks off down the hall, we see that the creature has made his way to the same inn and is there in the hallway, and he hears the locket playing music and can't resist. He has to go into the room. And it's like, I think he goes into the room and then we cut. So, you know, we've got this tension where like, we know where we're headed here.
Yeah.
But they're going to make us wait on it just a little bit. So we go down to the pub downstairs in the inn, where Victor is like talking to Elizabeth, and he's like, don't give up. I promise that I still want to marry you. I still want the life that we were working on building together. But first, you have to go back to Geneva, and you have to take Wilhelm with you. It's dangerous here. I have to resolve a problem, and I can't do that knowing that you were in danger. But as soon as everything is solved here, I'll return to you and we will marry. And then we go back upstairs where Wilhelm is like, Justine, is that you again? And, you know, I think the creature makes a little bit of a sound where he's like, oh, Victor, what's going on, Victor? And then he like, the creature steps through the curtain, and for a second, you know, Wilhelm sees what looks like Victor, and he's like, oh, brother, what happened? And then the creature is like, you're his brother. And then we cut back to the pub. So, you know, definitely not a good situation for Wilhelm. Down in the pub, Victor bumps into Felix, and Felix sees the guy that he just ejected from his father's hut, you know, and just starts trying to yell at him. And Victor's like, you know, this version of Victor I did appreciate has like that aristocratic kind of quality to him that sometimes we just don't have. And he's kind of like, I do not know you, sir. Who, you know, he's like offended that he's having to talk to a commoner in this pub.
Yeah.
And, you know, Anna, as a employee of the pub, is very apologetic and is like, I'm sorry, sir. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And she's kind of like drags Felix away and scolds him like, that's an important man. That, you know, him staying here, this pays my salary. This is what keeps us in food. Like, just don't fuck this up for me. And Felix is like, but why would an aristocrat who is, you know, is living here in town, why would he have been in the woods fighting with our dad? Like, something weird is going on here. And we go from that back upstairs where the creature is just exiting Wilhelm's room holding the locket. So we don't need to see what happened. We know. He goes into like the next room, which just happens to be Justine's, and she's asleep. And I did like, you know, we have versions of this where like the creature sort of like, I mean, including the novel where the creature is specifically just like, I'm going to plant this locket on this woman as evidence and make her, you know, pay for my crime, basically. But here it's sort of almost accidental. Like, I think he's drawn to Justine's beauty, as he often is, but she like stirs in her sleep, and he kind of gets like nervous that she's gonna wake up and see him, and he just kind of like drops the locket on her side table as he kind of like rushes out to safety. So it's sort of just coincidental that it has, been left with Justine. Later, Elizabeth is talking to Henry about her concerns about Victor still. Like, he keeps telling me that he's loyal to me, but something, there's something that I don't know, that I'm not clued in on here. I'm missing something. And again, Henry is trying to reassure her, and they say goodnight. They're headed to bed. They've got, separate rooms, but Elizabeth, on her way to her room, decides to peek in and check on her little cousin. And we just, again, just see her go into the room, and then we cut back down to the pub, or either out into the hall or into the pub. Like, we don't see Elizabeth, but we just hear her scream. And she screams, "Murder, Wilhelm." And the camera, instead of, showing Elizabeth or showing people respond to this, it just lingers on the nightstand where the locket is sitting. So we know where this is going. Which we kind of again, sort of jump in time a little bit, where Professor Kemp has stopped by to visit Victor, who is, of course, mourning the death of his little brother. And he offers his condolences, and he's like, "I know this is a great tragedy, and this is what you're focused on right now, but my understanding is that you're in the process of a great achievement. Do not abandon your studies because of this. Finish what you started." And Victor's like, "I have finished. My studies are complete. I'm done with this." And so, kind of sad to hear that, Kemp leaves, and then Henry comes in instead and tries to comfort Victor. And of course, Victor he knows what happened, as we often have. He's like, only someone completely inhuman could have killed Wilhelm so brutally. And Henry's like, "Yeah, I know you're trying to blame yourself. Elizabeth's down the hall doing the same thing right now," which is ridiculous because neither one of you is responsible. The murderer has been discovered. And Victor's like, "They couldn't have possibly caught him." And Henry's like, "No, it wasn't a him. It was Justine." And Victor's like, "No, it definitely was not Justine. She's innocent." And of course, Henry's like, "No, but there was evidence. Like, the locket was found with her, and when they found her, she was talking crazy. She was ranting. She made no sense. Something happened. She broke with reality, and she killed your brother." And this part's pretty faithful, and Victor's just like, "No, we got to go down to the jail and help her out at once because it wasn't her." So they do, and they find her weeping, and she's insisting on her innocence, and she doesn't understand who would have wanted to destroy William's life and then also destroy hers in the process. And she's begging Victor for help, he came here to help her, but it's like after her begging, he just kind of like runs out of the cell, and then we just cut to a little later, a priest giving her her last rites and letting her confess and leading her to a chopping block. Here she's not hanged. She is, decapitated by an executioner with an axe. And we just kind of see her tied up hands and hear the thud as the axe comes down.
Yeah. Have we ever seen her beheaded before?
I don't think so. We've had, in the Hammer one, there's been some guillotine stuff, but I don't think Justine was ever involved. I think Victor himself is guillotined, but then in the next movie it turns out that he faked his death with someone else or something, something like that. But
because Justine in the Hammer version, Victor basically feeds her to the Christopher Lee monster because he's having the affair with her. I think
I don't know that we've ever seen I don't think we've had the guillotine, but we've definitely, as far as I can remember, I don't think we've ever had an executioner with an axe. yeah, they really, it's, we've had, I want to say, is it the Branna version that has like the really gruesome, where she's like dropped off the city wall?
Yeah,
It's
it's like
like a long drop.
fucking yeah. It's like insanely brutal.
Yeah, and so this one it's interesting because like, I mean, I feel like, in theory, like, an executioner with an axe is even more brutal, but like it's, we just see her hands twitching, and so we kind of like are spared the really gruesome death, even though, we know what happened, obviously. Then we have like still Henry and Victor discussing that Justine was innocent, and Victor tries to kind of confess what happened. Like he's just putting it all on the table at this point. But Henry does not understand. Because, Victor's sort of ranting. Like we know what he's saying because we've seen everything, but if you don't know everything that happened, it just kind of sounds like nonsense.
Yeah, it just sounds like he's kind of having a mental breakdown.
Yeah, like he's somewhere in there he says like, I've become the author of indescribable evils, Henry, which, means nothing without knowing the specifics.
Yeah, just sounds like your really dramatic friend.
Yeah. Victor sends Henry away, and then but he says, go spend time with Elizabeth, comfort her, because I have to undo what I have done. And we've had a couple of times prior to this, we will hear like a heartbeat that's sort of indicative of like the creature's heartbeat. Especially when the creation first happens, and then maybe once or twice. I think when like, we have the confrontation between the two of them. But here we have it where like Victor's alone, and it almost feels like the creature's calling to him sort of metaphysically or something, like without being present. And so Victor wanders outside, and sure enough, the creature is out there. And the creature's like, why do you hate me so much? And Victor's like, of course I hate you. You've like, done such horrific things to me. I wish that I could kill you and restore those who you have killed. And the being is like, I was born good. The treatment that you gave to me and that others gave to me, that's what led to my destructiveness. And this is I'll leave everything behind if only you'll make me a bride scene. I'll live in peace, and the world will never encounter me again. And it doesn't take too much to sell Victor on it in this version, probably mostly because we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, that's one thing that this adaptation does really well for the most part, is like they managed to get a lot of the stuff from the book in like really efficient ways. I feel like they use their time very well.
Yeah, especially considering that like we also have this sort of like subplot of like Felix trying to solve a mystery that is unique to this version. It's wild to add something to the plot and still be able to cut little bits without like losing a good chunk of the story. Like really we lose the Arctic stuff, and we streamline the DeLacy stuff by like getting rid of Safi and the whole like the creature learning to read and speak and stuff. That's really the main thing we lose. And I think for what they add, it's worth it to have lost that.
Oh yeah. Well, because they kind of make it so different from like the typical adaptation that it's definitely worth it. I definitely agree.
Yeah. So yeah, the creature, or once Victor kind of agrees, the creature said basically, if you cheat, if you don't do what you've said, you're going to know my wrath. And then he vanishes. Back in the inn, we have Henry comforting Elizabeth as she's finally given up. She's going to go back to Geneva. And once she leaves, Anna is like, I need to ask you something, Mr. Clerval, about your lady's cousin. And Clerval's like, no. She's not my lady. She's her cousin's lady. And Anna's like, my brother and a lot of people in town they've been seeing things. It seems like Victor is out in the world causing trouble at night. Like there's do you know what's going on? And Henry, is confused by this. Like obviously, she's talking about the creature. Henry knows nothing of that, and so that they're not really communicating here in any way that either of them's going to learn anything. But we're getting the indication that like the village is aware of this monster and that it's causing trouble out in the night. So we're barreling towards a future where an angry mob is searching for something. But we instead cut back to Victor and Fritz back in the lab again, working on the bride. Fritz has got a brain in a jar, which we didn't see with the earlier creation, but always love to see a brain in a jar.
Oh yeah, it looks pretty good too for the budget.
Yeah, it definitely does. And again, Ross the Gravedigger, he's still around. Like even though he kind of like stormed out and during the previous creation, he's still there, but he's concerned because he's also been hearing rumors around town that that there's something going on. Ross is like, I don't know if we should be continuing and making another experiment considering what's going on with the first one. But Fritz is like, we got to get it done. Like that we can't drag our feet on this. And Victor, meanwhile, is like, the first one I made in sort of like a feverish rush, but now that I'm just like building this thing in cold blood, I don't know if I can go through with it.
That's something we get a lot with adaptions is, once Victor is kind of having to create another creature outside of the insane, almost like fever-like drive of creating the original creature, he is fully aware of how fucked up what he is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we cut away from Victor sort of dealing with this to the graveyard where Ross has left. He bumps into Felix, and this is a graveyard, it's a public place, but like right away Ross is like, oh no, this is the guy that's been stirring up all the rumors, and now he's like he's on our trail a little bit, so he kind of like it's like, you need to go, like you're not welcome here. And Felix kind of argues for a minute, but eventually just sort of does back off and just leave. And then Ross also bumps into Henry, who is mourning at, I assume Wilhelm's grave, which is kind of wild that they didn't like ship him back to Geneva. But Ross is like, you need to warn Victor. He's in great danger. People are coming for him at this point, and he will not listen to me, but maybe he'll listen to you. We cut from that to Victor, who has gone back down to his like bedroom, and he's kind of like feverish and weeping and like yelling that he's betrayed everyone who ever loved him, and he just can't go on. So he rushes up the stairs to his laboratory. He grabs like a hatchet and just starts like hacking at the bride, yelling, "Forgive me, forgive me." This is like, again, like Ian Holm is really giving it his all here. This scene is intense and really well done.
Yeah, it's like, everybody else is doing a good job. There's not really any bad performances, I would say, but Ian Holm is definitely like giving like 150%, whereas everybody else is just giving, like 100%.
Yeah. And we see that the creature is also in the room observing this happening. So we have him confronting Victor as Henry arrives downstairs, and he's trying to rush up to talk to Victor as well. And somehow in this, we're cutting back and forth and stuff, and just suddenly we cut back to the creature and Victor, and now the creature has that hatchet. Like, he's gotten it away from Victor, and he calls Victor a murderer, and he says, "You may have made yourself into a god, but I have the power to destroy you." And it almost seems like a relief to Victor. He's like, I don't fear death. I probably deserve death. You can kill me. You like, I accept. And the creature's like, well, what if I don't? What will you do if I let you go? And Victor's like, I'll go home. I'll forget that this ever happened. I'll abandon you and I will live my life. I'll get married. And him saying that he would marry obviously upsets the creature, who says, you would do what you deny me. And he's like, the classic line, I'll be with you on your wedding night.
Yep. Got it.
So, so we're getting there. And at that point, Henry has climbed up the stairs. He comes in, and we have Victor yelling, run, Henry, leave, go away. But he's frozen in place. And, he's come into this lab and he sees Victor twice, like that would be shocking. So we have the creature swinging the axe, and we cut away. And we're back in the pub where Felix is kind of coming across. He looks a little crazy here. He's ranting about all these conspiracy theories at Professor Kemp. It turns out that he's pretty much nailed it. He's got it all. He's right. But Kemp's like, this sounds crazy. Really, the only, like, Felix is only missing that there's basically twins. He thinks that Victor murdered Henry. So again, we have a little bit of a time jump where, like, we know that this murder took place, and some, that other people know about it. But Felix is like, I mean, it makes sense that he would have killed his friend, I guess, but he came in the woods and tried to kill my dad, which is weird, but I definitely saw him and I know what happened. And Kemp is like, no, that sounds insane.
Yeah.
But Felix is able to convince some people, because we just cut right to Felix with like 2 police officers just bursting into Victor's home. And like they're there to confront Victor, and Victor's just kind of like, again, like, even though he was like, I accept death and all this, just, in the previous scene, when it comes to like a peasant coming to like accuse him of something, he immediately becomes an aristocrat again, and he's like, you come to accuse me? The police are like, we're going to take you in, we'll question you, we need to search things, but you're not, definitely accused yet. Like, so then we have Victor a little later in a jail cell, and Kemp comes to visit him. And I found this very interesting. So we had the scene earlier where, like, Henry is talking to Victor about Justine, and Henry's like, there's so much evidence. Basically, we found a locket, and then Justine was upset. And that's enough evidence. She's definitely the murderer.
Yeah, case fucking closed.
Yeah. Whereas here, Kemp's like, we can find some evidence to prove you were innocent, even though people found you in your lab holding a bloody axe next to your murdered friend. He's like, because he says, we'll find evidence more powerful than the rantings of a drunken peasant. And, like, sure, if that was it's just a drunken peasant, but, like, no, we have a dead body in Victor's house.
Yeah.
Plenty of evidence. But Justine is a poor servant girl, and Victor is an aristocrat. So, yeah, obviously, there's a double standard here, which I think is, again, intentional. I think that's in Mary Shelley's novel on purpose, and I love it when an adaptation gets that part right. Like, I think Mary wants us to think about how justice is different depending on how much money you have.
Yeah, and that's been that way for basically forever.
Yes. Kemp also tells Victor, like, we'll get you out, and Elizabeth is already aware of what's going on. She is going to come help. And Victor's like, no, don't tell her. Spare her the suffering. There's a horrible destiny awaits me, and I don't want her to be tied to that. And then we cut away to Felix, who is at home, like just absolutely drunk and asleep at his desk, and he's woken up by a knock at the window, and he looks out, and there is the creature, the Victor-looking guy, but with the scabs and scars and everything, and we cut right away to Elizabeth comforting Victor, who is back home. He has been released from jail, and he's like, I wish that I could undo everything that's happened. I wish that I could just die, if that would make you happy and you'd be free and safe. I have so much to tell you. And you know, we have this often where like Victor's like, I've got this one thing to confess to you, and once I get that off my chest, then we can move forward together as equals, as partners. And Elizabeth's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But here Elizabeth's like, nah, I don't want to know. Like, let's just worry about the future. Let the memories fade. Let the past just go away. I don't want to know. What's done is done. My time with you starts here, and you know, anything before that is none of my business, basically. Which is pretty wild. Like, to her just being like, you know, whatever it is, if you had a girlfriend, if you murdered somebody, I don't care. Like, I just want to marry you and move forward.
Yeah.
So he sort of agrees to that, but he does go over to his desk and take a pistol and tuck it into his coat. And then we immediately cut to the two of them leaving a church post-wedding. She's all smiles. You know, it's time. They're moving forward. They're going to live together in happiness now as a married couple. But he, meanwhile, is, you know, his eyes are, you know, darting around. You know, he knows that the wedding night has arrived. And he knows what's going to, you know, possibly happen now. So we then have Elizabeth in her room alone with Anna, who, in addition to being like, you know, a housekeeper or a tavern girl, is also sort of like a lady in waiting here, and is like helping Elizabeth get dressed. And Elizabeth's like, okay, go downstairs and tell everybody that I'm ready and that it's time to start the reception. And we see down in the pub that, you know, the reception's already... I don't know if this is just the way things were, like, where it's like, you know, all the men are sort of drinking a toast to the happy couple in the future and everything. But then, like, you know, Elizabeth's going to make a grand entrance, and that's when the reception will truly begin. But, you know, Kemp is obviously very happy that Victor is now a doctor. He has graduated with honors. I don't know when this happened, but somehow he finished his doctorate in the process of, like, you know, trying to build a bride and, you know, fleeing from the monster and mourning his murdered family and his best friend and all of going to jail. All of this, he's also a doctor.
Oh, yeah.
Now. But then Kemp says something pretty stupid. Like, I mean, it's you know, the film here is intentionally sort of making us reckon with how dumb this thing is that Kemp says, which is, you know, now that you've married and you have this bride, there's a future ahead of you with children that can be born to replace those who've been lost. And Victor does not like that. He's like, a human cannot be replaced. We may have children, but the people who are gone are gone. And we again have this heartbeat, you know, in Victor's head or whatever. And Victor immediately just like, they were drinking a toast. He's holding a wine glass and he just like smashes it. Because he knows, or like he just, you know, is upset, and like, but he knows something's going on. That heartbeat, spidey sense is tingling again, or whatever. So he rushes upstairs to find Elizabeth. But we cut to Elizabeth, who, you know, hears a door open and turns and is like, "Oh, Victor!" And then we cut back to Victor, who's actually still in the hallway. So I mean, we obviously know what's going on here, but like, so then Victor actually rushes into the room and finds that Elizabeth is dead on the floor with the creature standing over her. And again, we get this really cool thing where, like, because Victor and the creature look alike, he was able to approach Elizabeth and scare her in a different and more powerful way. It's one thing to have a scary, weird monster attack you, but it's another thing to have a horrific mirror image of the man you love come in and, surprise you because, you think he's here as your husband and not as your killer. I think this is a true crime sort of trope we see so often where, like, the husband becomes the monster and kills his wife. I think that I definitely think that that's why we have Ian Holm as the monster and as Victor. It sort of like echoes the Thomas Edison version where we have, like, Victor looking in the mirror and seeing the monster instead of his own reflection and stuff. So, like, I think the monster is definitely real and tangible and exists and is a separate being from Victor, but they're still tied together in a way that they're not usually. Like, that connection is very, very explicit here. And it's Victor's monstrousness that has caused Elizabeth's death, in a real physical way, and also in the repercussions of his actions, in that he's created this thing. So yeah, I really like the way that this all kind of culminates here in this moment. Of course, then we have Victor standing there looking at his creation, looking at himself, having murdered, his bride. The creature says, "I warned you." And Victor calls him a devil. And the creature's like, yes, I am, but I'm also your creation. As we mentioned, Victor earlier put a gun in his coat, and he pulls it and, holds it on the creation, who in sort of like an echo to earlier when the creature is like, "I could kill you," and Victor's like, "Do it." Now Victor could kill the creature, and the creature says, "Yeah, I dare you. Shoot me. If you do, it will end my suffering, but it will destroy your life in the process, because it's going to draw everyone in here, and they're going to find you here with your dead wife and me." So, take your best shot. And Victor realizes that whether he can't because of he knows what would happen, or if he just can't bring himself to commit murder, he just kind of collapses and just weeps. And the creature just walks over and just, like, casually takes the gun from him and walks down the stairs, walks into the pub where, like, there's a bunch of people who now see a monstrous version of Victor. And he just smashes, like, everything in the pub. Like, he's just, like, breaking glasses, flipping tables, and he's yelling the whole time. He says, "Ring your bells, ring your God's holy bells," which is such a, I don't know, like, it seems like a unique phrase to this version. I've never heard the creature say this before, and I don't really know. It's really an affecting rant, I guess. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure, other than that, like, he obviously doesn't believe in God, and bells are certainly symbolic both of weddings and death. But yeah, I don't know. I found this again to be a really powerful performance from Ian Holm, that just kind of, like, shook me up a little bit. But eventually, as the crowd sort of, like, backs away from this, like, enraged creature with a familiar face, Victor eventually does come downstairs and walk outside, and he just collapses on the steps, just like exhausted and mourning again someone he loves who he's directly responsible for their death. And we get those heartbeats one more time. And this time Victor just kind of like looks up, and there's the creature just standing there, standing over him as he sits on the steps. And he's just obviously defeated, like he has nothing anymore. And the creature very calmly here says, "You willed me, Frankenstein. Don't forget that I am born of your brain, your hands fashioned me, and your vanity rejected me." And Victor again is just like, just kill me, just end this. I'm done. And this ending sort of called to mind the version that his name just left me. The creator of Dark Shadows, the 1970s version that he produced.
Dan Curtis, yeah. I almost said Danny Boyle.
But like, I think they kind of had a final confrontation, like just sitting outside on the steps. And so the creature is, standing there holding this gun, and Victor is accepting death. And the creature says, once I do this, the people they'll find me and they will kill me. And then they will become like you and I, murderers themselves. And like almost at like this monstrousness, you created me as a monster, and that turned you into a monster. And now it's a virus, and just anyone that crosses our paths will take on monstrousness of their own. I can't make life like you can, Frankenstein, but I can end it. And he just shoots Victor Frankenstein.
Yeah.
We've had, a monster who can break necks and throw people off of tall buildings or like the monster is usually a brute force embodied. It's strange to see the Frankenstein monster holding a pistol and using a pistol. But it feels right here, where like Victor and the monster are one and the same, and they're both human and both monster at the same time. And so the monster kills in the most human way possible with a gun, shoots Victor Frankenstein, and then just walks directly into the camera, and like it cuts to black as he like passes directly in front of the camera, and that takes us to credits.
Yeah, it like, jeez, I was watching it and I was like, holy shit. I was like, I can't believe he just shot him. Like, that's never, because the creature is so normally portrayed as being non-human. He's got strong connections to like nature and like being a natural being, and like he's able to survive in nature in ways that humans can't. And him never using weapons, I think, is also part of that sort of that theme. But yeah, like you said, because in this adaptation he and Victor are so supernaturally, cosmically intertwined, it makes perfect sense for him to use not just a gun, but Victor's own gun.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a suicide in a way. It's like Victor knows it's coming and accepts it. Like he is ready and willing to die. And the monster is as well, right? Like he's acknowledging that like, once I do this, the people are going to come for me and they are going to kill me too.
Yeah.
He could just leave Victor alive and wander off and maybe be forgotten or able to disappear. But he is also accepting that his fate is death. So just, I mean, it's incredible in that like it is both pretty faithful, and yet where it deviates in ways that really bring up some interesting things to think about, and some new ways to approach this story. In that way, it does feel comparable to the Del Toro version in that, like, you know, it's really faithful until it's not, and when it's not, it wants you to think about why it's not.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, again and again, that's always my favorite thing about doing this show and watching all of these movies, is finding those moments, especially when those moments feel so well thought out and so intentional. And this is definitely successful in that.
Yeah, it's really incredible how, like I said before, I mean, my expectations were not like super high for this, and it really just kind of blew my mind in the ways that, like, it deviates almost specifically in the ways that you wouldn't expect it to deviate. Like with the blind man in particular, like the fact that, you know, they change it, like it's the blind man's always a friend of the creature. It's never the creature's fault or the blind man's fault. It's always Felix's fault. But, you know, they make the blind man so religious that the creature, you know, slightly blaspheming, kind of turns his whole attitude around, like, in an instant. It's just really, I would highly recommend this to people to watch, especially if you are, you know, a regular listener of the show, or like somebody who's seen a lot of adaptations of the Frankenstein story. I think this is definitely worth your time, and like it's just really amazing what they managed to do with something that on the outside is kind of unassuming. Like, oh, you know, it's a 1 hour TV movie from a weird, semi-lost, you know, 60s British TV show.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, we kind of like we're hinting at that at the beginning of the episode, that just like this is so much better than it needed to be, or that it has any right to be. Like of all the things, you know, if you listen to us every week and you just like occasionally check out the movie, this is one that I would, highly recommend. Especially if you've seen a lot, or if you just watched the Del Toro one and you like want a companion to it. I mean, it's obviously very different. It's much lower budget. It is not as grandiose as what Del Toro was able to accomplish, but there's something about it that is approaching from a similarly unique angle. I will say it's asking different questions, but it's equally aware of what you can do with the Frankenstein story as Del Toro is. And and I don't think we said, but like I believe there is a sort of out of print DVD collection of the surviving series of this that I'm going to try to track down, but you don't have to try to track it down. It's just on YouTube. You can find this very easily. It's an hour and 18 minutes. And it is definitely worth your time.
Yes, I definitely agree. Check it out for sure. Highly worth it. Also, before we go, I looked it up earlier while we were covering everything. In the 1994 Branagh version that Ian Holm is Victor's father in, the blind man does indeed play the flute. And also in the later scene where Victor and the creature meet, the creature has taken said flute and tells Victor that he remembered how to play it. Like it's a memory from one of his previous donor parts or something.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, I do remember this now that you say that. That sticks out to me.
So that is just really incredible that this version and the Branagh version both are the only two I can think of where the blind man plays a flute, and I don't know if that was intentional or just a really fun coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, either way, like it's interesting, especially with Ian Holm, being in that version as well. Like that if it's not intentional, it's a really beautiful coincidence.
Agreed. Yeah. I think we pretty much covered that. This is one of those where it's like it's a lot more impactful like seeing it yourself, I feel like, than just hearing us talk about it. Like it's definitely something, especially with Ian Holm's performance. It's so unique, and it's got so much passion and energy in it that it's definitely one to check out. But I think we've said all we've got to say about it this time.
Yeah, I think we've well covered it at this point.
Yeah. Well, Anthony, do you know what's going to be coming next week?
So I believe if things go according to plan, Eric will be back next week, and I think, we were still kind of straightening out how this scheduling stuff will all work, and like several episodes ago, I mentioned that we would probably be talking about Matinee soon, and then we just didn't because other things popped up, but I'm pretty sure Eric and I are going to try to talk about Matinee for next week. But more importantly for us here today, next time Hayden is back, if that's next week or in 2 weeks or whatever, we will be talking about the other Robert Mueller interpretation of Frankenstein that I mentioned. This is from a BBC series from the 70s the show is called Supernatural, and this particular short film is called Night of the Marionettes. And I know nothing about it other than that it's written by the same guy that did this and is a reimagination of Frankenstein in some way. So I'm super excited about it considering how much I loved this.
Yes, definitely looking forward to that. And I'm a huge Jensen Ackles fan, so really looking forward to watching some more Supernatural. I joke, but speaking of which, that there was like one of the very later seasons they literally have Sam and Dean fight the Frankenstein family.
I did actually watch all of Frankenstein with my ex. Like it was one of those shows we watched together, and it got really bad near the end and weird and stuff. And I absolutely do not remember a Frankenstein episode, but I must have watched it, and we absolutely need to do it. That would be amazing.
Well, it's not just one episode. It's like a 3 or 4 episode arc where like Frankenstein, the family are all involved in like biological experiments and like resurrections and stuff. And it's like a branch of the family that lives in Louisiana, I think. And Sam and Dean somehow uncover that they are the Frankenstein family. But yes, I would absolutely love to, maybe for like a bonus episode, to rewatch those episodes and go over that. Because I remember, from what I remember of watching it, it's pretty fucking insane.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It's in season 10, which is really far in there, and it's like episodes 17 through 22. The Stein family.
Yeah.
Oh man, yes, I absolutely have to watch this. So, that sounds like a great Patreon episode. So we'll do that sometime pretty soon, to like in connection with this other thing that's very different.
All right, I think that's all we have to say about Mystery and Imagination. So Anthony, I guess if that's it, then it's to be continued.
Looks like you've survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.
Well, if that's all we've got to say about mystery and imagination, then I guess, Anthony, it's going to be... Hey! Quit barking. Stop. Come here. Peace. All right. Sorry. Let me do that over.